Welcome. Tonight we are going to be talking all about setting powders. If you haven't met me, hi, my name's Karen, and I am a mature makeup fanatic, makeup lover. I'm 57 years old, and I love to teach mature makeup tips. So if you are interested in that, make sure you give my page a follow. I would love it. So we're going to talk tonight about setting powders. So we all know that we need to set our makeup, whether we use setting spray, setting powder, or a combination of the two. So what I really want to focus on tonight, though, is more on setting powder. All right. So are we supposed to use it when we're in our, mature skin? Are we not supposed to use it? What's the difference between, a pressed powder and translucent powder and loose powder? So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. And so as you hop on, make sure you say hi and let me know where you're watching from. And if you have any questions, just pop them down there below and I'll do my best to look for them and answer them. And if you are watching this later on the replay, well, welcome too, and just comment replay, and you can always ask questions there as well. All right, so first thing I want to talk about let me go back. I think I want to talk to you about my addiction that I had to this stuff forever. It even smells it. So this is pressed powder, and I don't even know what color this is, but it was always a color, and it came with this little press pad, and this is what we call pressed powder, and I was addicted to this. It was my last step in doing my makeup, my liquid makeup or my BB cream or whatever I was using, and it was then after I put my pressed powder on, this went into my purse, and if I did not bring it with me, I would have like withdrawals, okay? So, and then I would use it throughout the day, all day long. So whenever I would look in the mirror and I'd be like, my makeup, what's wrong with my makeup? I would go grab my pressed colored powder, and I would just start pressing this on my face. Okay, so you can see, I don't know if you can see that, but I didn't know. I thought this is what I thought that's what this is supposed to be for. And I would keep doing it throughout the day, touching it up. And what would happen is I would go look at myself in the mirror, and throughout the day, my face got drier and flakier, and my pores showed even more and texture. And so I would add more powder. And I was just repeating this vicious cycle, not knowing that the culprit was the powder, right? So let me brush some of this off really quick. I don't know. This was just, like I said, I had to use my pressed powder all the time. And especially here in my T-zone, I would use it. You'd be working throughout the day and you start to get a little shiny. And I was like, shiny? Oh, I can't be shiny. I've got to have all that matted down. And so I would press it here between my forehead. And of course, that was the area where I was most dry. The majority of my skin, side of my temples, around my nose, I was always really dry. And so this would start to get flaky skin. And so I would put more pressed powder on top, and then it would get flakier and flakier. So that is my story about pressed powder. And let me know if that's something that you're dealing with. And if you're still using pressed powder, maybe I can convince you to try something else. Okay, so that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. So obviously, like I say, we need to set our makeup. It helps, reduce makeup touch-ups throughout the day. It helps smudging. It helps with transfer. It helps with oil control and all of that. But I want to tell you one thing about putting too much powder on your face. If you are oily, just think about this while we're going through this today. The more powder and drying products you put on your face, the more oily you're going to be. So it's this vicious cycle. Powder, then it gets oily, underneath, or the next day you're more oily because the skin is wanting to produce more moisture, which is oil. So anyway, let's talk about some other options besides pressed powder. But that's what this is. And like I said, it can lead to not only like the flakiness and the cakiness, but it also can, really remove all of the radiance and all of the dewiness to your mature skin, which is really what we need. That's what makes our skin look so much more fresh and well, I'm just going to use the word youthful, but it gives us more youthful. That's what, that's why we put blush on. Blush, you pinch your cheeks. It makes you look healthier and more youthful and more fresh. And so when you lose a little bit of that radiance with too much mattifying products, that's kind of goes against what we want with our over 50 skin, right? Okay. So let me show you some other options. So the other options are what we call setting powders, not pressed powders, but setting powders. And they can either be loose. All right, so how many of you recognize this from either you have it yourself or your mom had it or your grandma had it? Who recognizes the Coty Airspun? I mean, this stuff is magical, right? I remember this. My mom had this, and I would always make a mess. I still do, opening it up, and I'd play with it and stuff. But this is loose powder, okay? So it comes in colors, it can, but majority of the time it's a very light color or it's translucent. Loose powders are a little bit finer. They're lightweight in their texture, and they're kind of like a good alternative to a pressed powder. So if you still like a very matte finish on your face, you don't want any of the dewy and the glow, then, setting with a loose powder might be better. It doesn't add a whole lot of coverage unless even if they're a little bit tinted. So that's nice. And it usually doesn't affect the shade of your makeup underneath. So the other type is like a truly translucent powder. This one here, even though it's pressed in this tin, it really is a very finely milled setting powder, like extremely fine. And it's translucent, meaning when it goes over the skin, it doesn't add any color. And since it's very, very finely milled, meaning it's really, really loose and tiny little milled bits of powder that are ground up, it doesn't give you that. The negative side of even loose powders and translucent powders is, enhancing pores and getting into your fine lines and looking cakey. So those are the three powders: the pressed powder, the loose powder, and the translucent, either loose translucent or this one here that is in a tin that makes it easy for you to carry around. And you can actually don't have to loosen it up with, sometimes I'll use a little spoolie just so you can kind of see, that it is very loose, but you can also just apply it with a brush or a sponge. So we'll talk about the different ways you can apply it. So welcome everyone. Let me know if you have any questions so far or comments about powder or questions that you want me to kind of address as we go along here. I think setting powders are especially useful if you have, oily skin, if you have combination skin, if you live in the summertime, or you're out vacationing, or you're being very active, that is nice to have that extra powder. There's nothing like, setting with a little bit of powder to help with that. But it's important, like I said, to make sure that we're using the right powder and we're using the right amount, right? Okay, so that's what we're going to kind of talk about a little bit. So welcome. Come on in. We're talking about powders. All right. So there are some downsides to even translucent setting powders. If you use too much of them is one. If you really, really bake on a lot, and baking is when you take a ton of powder on like a sponge. It could be either dry or damp, and you really just powder this, especially with our mature skin. We see a lot of the young makeup beauty influencers do this kind of thing. They're calling it baking, where they go in and they just bake their whole under eye or bake their side of their here underneath their contour. They'll just come in and bake all of that. And so baking is basically where they're taking powder, translucent or loose powder. Sometimes it's even more intense. This is the loose powder, but they'll just, literally they go in and bake like that. All right. So we can't necessarily do that, or maybe shouldn't, even though we're seeing, beauty influencers and makeup artists, make note of, and I'm not trying to be not using ageism, but make note of their age and their skin, and just realize that we don't probably need that much. So even with me then going back in and lightly brushing some of that off, look at the, I mean, it just looks so dull underneath my eye here. Look at how, and I'm just noticing like this is very, very, I can see a lot more of all that texture there compared to just even over here where, you know, I don't have a whole lot of makeup underneath my eye. I just have my cream makeup on and just a little bit of brightener and concealer, but really look at the difference there of going in with even a translucent loose powder, but really putting too much on. So there are downsides to even the translucents and the loose powders, okay? Another thing about it is that, you know, it's also kind of dulling and your complexion out, which is not what we want. It's like taking away. If we're using like contour and brighteners and highlights and even, you know, bronzer, and we're trying to like, you know, define our face and give our face some structure and add some, you know, well, luminosity and structure and all of that. And then we go in and powder it all down to matte. It really, not only, it mattes everything out, but it also flattens us out. It starts to flatten and we start to lose a lot of that definition. Okay. You know, and even, you know, under eye darkness and things like that, that's all definition to our face. And we really start to lose that and we just become flat. So those are some downsides to it as well. I think some things also is that making sure that we have a good skincare routine to start with if we want to use powder. And that means, you know, moisturizing, you know, morning and night, exfoliating a couple times a week, getting our skin in the best condition it can be. That's great for all of us. It's great for us. It's great for anybody, but it's also great for any type of makeup that you use. You know, your makeup's only going to look as good as the skin condition underneath. So you want to make sure that you are, you know, exfoliating, you're moisturizing, and that your skin, you know, preparing your skin for that. Hi, everybody. Come on in. It's kind of a techie thing here a little bit about powders. And we were just talking about the downsides of setting powders, not just the pressed powder, which, you know, the darker pressed powders, but also even the translucent setting powders or the loose ones, if we are adding too much to certain areas. And the areas we want to watch out for are wherever we have the most texture. So if we have a lot of pores in a certain area and we're putting too much powder over that, we're going to see the pores even more. Out here, if we have texture and we add a lot of powder, it's really going to accentuate all of that if we're adding too much. All right, but so how can we use it? We can. Yes, we can use it. Wonderful. Oh yes, skincare is great. Definitely. Yes, we definitely want to use good skincare. And, you know, let me talk about maybe the right way to apply. So a couple things we can do. So we can apply our setting translucent if you can. Switch to a translucent setting powder, and a couple different ways you can apply it. So if you want to still add powder underneath your eyes, for maybe you just notice throughout the day that even, you know, with your setting spray or whatnot, maybe you don't like to put setting spray underneath your eye, but you want to powder under your eye. Just, again, use either a powder brush and just pick up the smallest amount, and you want to not swipe it on, but just press that on. And then, like I said, we want to be really aware of those areas that have the most texture, which are usually the inner part of our eye and the outer. So we want to just lightly brush some of that off so it's not too much in that area. But you can see how that really mattified that down, okay? Another way you can add your powder is with either a dry or a damp sponge. So let's say you get really, you want to mattify your T-zone, okay? So that's usually the place we get the most noticeable shine, you know, this T-zone, which is down the center of your face and across here. And that's, you know, here and here. And that's usually because those are the areas that, you know, are out the most and promoting them, or, you know, are most pronounced. Does powder stop creasing? Powder can cause creasing. If we use too much of it, it can cause creasing, okay? So powder can cause creasing, meaning if you are using too much, you're just going to emphasize that. And as soon as you wiggle your eyes and move around, that powder, if there's too much of it, is going to just get into all of those, and it's just going to emphasize the lines. So moisture and keeping, if you can avoid setting with setting powder, then that's the best, especially in areas where you have the most movement and things like that and the most texture. But, usually down our nose, kind of on our forehead area, across our here, that's usually what we call the T-zone. And so you can do that, especially if you have oily or combination skin. So you can pick it up with a dry brush, dry sponge, like I showed before. You can use a damp sponge. I use the damp sponge to press in my cream makeup, but you can find a little spot on it and just lightly tap in. And then again, we don't want to rub it on, but just come up and just lightly tap it and press it. Okay, just kind of bring it down the nose. If you want to come across this way, you can, and then down here. And then again, what I do is I always get like a fluffy brush of some kind, and I want to make sure that I'm removing any of that excess powder and dusting that off. So I've only pressed it in where I need it and pressing it, and then removing any excess. So let's see. Let me see what else I can tell you guys. Let's ask any questions too as we go along. So here's a good one that I always thought was interesting. And I think I always kind of did it one way. And I know the reason why is setting spray and setting powder. If you want to use both, what order do you do it in? Okay. So makeup professionals and makeup artists will say you always put your setting powder on first. You set with powder first if you're using it, and then you spray with setting spray after. Now, that's going to give you a more, how do I want to say this? Kind of more of a semi-matte finish, meaning if you're powdering and setting first, that's going to mattify and set the makeup. And then if you're able to, then spray over the top with a little bit of your setting spray, which usually a lot of times setting spray will add a bit of luminosity back in. So you can, shake that up after you set everything. It's usually the last step. And then you're just going to spray that on your face. And a lot of times some setting sprays will add, if they're not matting setting sprays. I don't know if I would use setting powder and a mattifying setting spray together. That might be too much, but that's one way. So if you want a more semi-matte finish, you apply your powder first and then you set with your setting spray. But let's say you are extremely oily, you live in the South or you're on vacation in a tropical area and you have combination oily skin and you're going to be out running around on the beach or out, cruising, having a little Mai Tai somewhere, and you're going to be hot, but you want your makeup to still look good, then you're probably going to want to do it the opposite way, okay? And so that would give you a much more matte finish, which would be spray your setting spray on first, let that dry, and then go in with your setting powder, and that will help give you even a little bit longer lasting and a little bit more matte look. So let me know here how many of you use setting powders or pressed powders, and what is your experience with them? Do you like more of a matte look, or have you found that as you're maturing in your skin, you're wanting a little bit less of a matte look, but you might have areas that you still like to set with powder? Let me know as we're going along here. Okay, so another cool thing to do is if you find that you might be using too much setting powder is to actually start by applying your setting powder out here closer to the outer part of your face. This is also great if you have long hair or long bangs and you feel like you get sweaty along your hair and your makeup, your hair gets stuck in makeup and things like that, is to take your translucent setting powder. I love this one too. Yeah, I like it to set your eyes. Yeah, exactly. I'm going to ask you a question about that, Jeannie. So let me do this. Let me show you this. So take a little bit and you're going to start on the outside. Okay. And then tap around. Then when you want to bring it in and use it, there's still plenty of powder here. There really is. And then bring the powder in. So the majority of the powder is out here underneath your hair, on the outside of your face. And then as you bring it in, just a little bit of that powder. There's plenty on that brush to just bring it in. That's how little you really need to set your under eye area. So Janine, how do you, when you set powder, when you set your under eyes, how do you find that really helps kind of keep your mascara from transferring? Why do you like to set your under eye makeup with setting powder? Let me know, because I really, would love to know kind of how we're using our setting powders, what tips you have, and how it's working for you. That's really great. I love that about this group and this community, is that we can share all these tips with each other. Okay, so what was I going to say? So in a couple ways, like I say, so setting underneath your eyes and your T-zone, yes. Another way you can use translucent setting powder is to extend the wear. And I've shown you this before. Extend the wear of like glossy blush. And a great way to do that is to apply your blush first. And then let me put some on so you can kind of see. So I would go in and I would either tap on with my finger and blend it in, or I would just take my brush and apply. So this is a glossy shade. So this one is a little bit more sheer. It's a little glossy. And a lot of times the sheer glossy shades tend to not maybe wear as long, and you feel like you have to use them a little bit more. So what you can do is take some of your powder and then tap over your blush and kind of make a blush sandwich, and then go back in and lightly add a bit more of your blush over the top. So you've kind of created this sandwich that really helps that lasting wear of that glossy blush. You can do the same thing on the lips as well. Sometimes you just got to be careful if you have, dry lips or a lot of lines in your lips and things like that. Make sure you're doing skincare on your lips as well by exfoliating them and keeping them moisturized, so those lines are less lessened. But you could do the same thing if you have a lip color that you really want to last longer. So this is glossy here. But you can take a sponge, put just a little bit over your lips to kind of create, again, that layering, and then go back in and add your color over the top. And that kind of gives you that extra layer. Okay, so Janine, I use it before my shadows, after my highlights. And I have dark eyes. Very good. Okay, yes. So keeping the setting powder to the minimal amount is really important. And if you find that you are getting a little, like adding powder is maybe enhancing texture underneath your eyes or making them look too dry, then, try maybe avoiding doing that in that area and just see how it works, or making sure that you're using just the smallest amount. Okay, it's just the smallest amount. So usually that's kind of the key there. All right, another way I like to, because I wear glasses all the time, and another way to kind of prevent your glasses from moving on you throughout the day is to just put a little bit of setting powder. I know it's weird. Right on the bridge of your nose there. It really does help kind of mattify any makeup that's right there, that's maybe creamy, or, we already get a little bit oily throughout the day there. So if you tap a little powder, translucent powder right there, and then put your glasses on, it really does help them from slipping throughout the day. So I love that. That's a fun tip as well. I also like to use it to set my eyelids before I do my eyeshadow. So I do have eyeshadow on already, but if I were to, a lot of times I'll color correct my eyelids with one of my foundation shades that is a little bit warmer to help color correct some of the bluish purple veins and to kind of even out the uneven coloring that I have on my eyelids. And then putting this cream on, it needs to be set, and I don't want to spray it with setting spray necessarily. So what I'll do is I'll take, after I do that, I'll take some of my translucent setting powder and really almost prime them. And I'll just tap really well and prime that whole eyelid. And then I can go in with my eyeshadows, and it really does help with your eyeshadow looking more crisp, going on smoother, not, you know, getting crepey. It really helps with that and makes that eyeshadow last much longer. Plus, it just makes it look so much brighter because it's powder likes to sit on top of powder, and your eyeshadows will look so different if you prime them that way. Let me see, what else am I missing? So I think that was pretty quick. I know it was maybe kind of boring, but let's do some questions. Let's take some questions and see if you have any for me. I'm going to do my my blush on the other side here while we're doing that. So I'm going to take my blush, and this happens to be a color called Royal, and it is a glossy shade. This is a tip I like to do also, is if I get too much blush, I'll take the other side of my blush and bronzer and just kind of diffuse that blush a bit. And then we'll take the powder, make a little blush sandwich, powder over it, and then go back in with a little bit more of that blush just to give us that longer wear. Hi, Pat. How are you? So, Pat, you use one of your highlights, your highlight shades, and then powder. I think eyeshadow goes on easier. It sure does. Yes. So using one of your cream highlight shades, which are what we call our foundation shades here. So she uses one of these to even out her eyelids, and then go in with setting powder over the top. That makes a huge difference. So, okay, Lori, what was the angled brush you were using with the powder? Okay, so this is actually our powder brush. I don't know if you knew we had one. This is a powder brush from Seint. You can get it on its own, or it comes in a collection where you can get the powder and the brush. And this is a great brush. Like I said, this brush, this end here is a little bit firmer, so it's great for pressing powder on. So you can press it. This side here is really great for like kind of powdering along the cheekbones or up into the hairline. And it also is great for powdering. I like to take and just press this all on my eyelids. So this is the powder brush. And I also like it because this looser end here, I can flick off any of that excess powder. I know I'm still freaking out about how much of the pressed powder is down here from the Neutrogena that I put here. It's like, woo, that is strong stuff. All right. And then Lois, what eyeshadow colors do you have on now? They look so good. So this is a really fun eyeshadow combination. It's just 2 shades. It is, they're both from Seint, and the one I have in the crease and down here is called Bird. It's a matte shade called Bird. And then in the center where I have a little bit of that shimmer is called Rome. And these two together are a really nice eyeshadow. And I'm actually going to be doing, on Wednesday, we're going to be doing eyeshadow combinations just like this. And I'm going to be sharing a whole bunch of them during that live. So it'll be a busy one. We'll be putting eyeshadow on, taking it off, showing you a lot of different combinations on my arm, and just bring your notepad, bring your eyeshadows if you want to. We're going to be doing that on Wednesday. So lots of easy 2 eyeshadow looks. These are the best. I love just 2 eyeshadows. You can do so much with them, a matte and a shimmer, and they're just so great. These are great, great questions. So any other questions that we have? It's almost 5 o'clock. I'm trying to get better at these. Some of them may go longer than a half hour. Some of them may try to keep them at least under 45 minutes so that you can all get on with your evening. And if you're watching it on the replay, it's not going on and on and on forever. All right. Well, let me know if any of these tips were helpful to you, and make sure you comment below. Please give me some hearts. And if you think that this is a valuable little lesson on setting powders and pressed powders, then please share this with a couple of your friends, or share it with a family member or somebody that you think would enjoy it. So Lois, all of my lives this week are at 4:30 Pacific. Yep, same time all week, Monday through Saturday. And I have a schedule posted here on the page too of the different topics we're going to cover. So love to have you join us. That would be so awesome. Yes. Okay. Well, I will follow up afterwards. And if there's any comments that come in throughout the evening and the next day or two, you're welcome. Yay. Thank you, gals. Oh, I'm glad it's valuable to you. Definitely valuable. Please share it. Please share it with your friends. Invite some friends over to like and follow this page. I would love that. So Would love to grow this community. That would be so much fun. We're getting there, and I would just love to get it to be a bigger and bigger community of all of us over 50 gals who, well, and if you're not over 50, you can still be here. It's fine. Have you join us. All right. Have a good night, and I'll talk to you next time.